Sam from WargamerOnline, and today we're going to look at Chapter Approved for Warhammer 40k. So this is the 2017 edition. There's been a few updates in here, mainly rules for open play, match play and narrative play. There's been updates on points, and we've got a load of extra scenarios. So it's going to be a fairly quick flick through really. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but I'm going to show you what is inside the book, and you can decide yourself whether it's going to be worth it for you or not. Because depending of the contents and what you actually take from the hobby, especially the gaming side, will determine really if this is a book that you will need, or whether it's something you could skip and wait and wait for something a little bit more impactful. So there's a lot of content in here. We're going to go straight into it. So we've got the ways to play Warhammer 40k, and you've got open, narrative and match play. Very similar to what we've seen in the past with pretty much every release in the last couple of years, especially from Age of Sigmar including that. Big one is Apocalypse is in this book. So it's a bit of a loose term for Apocalypse. Basically it's bring whatever you want, and as you can see on there, they brought everything they wanted. In terms of the actual rules, it gives you a guide on how to actually play an Apocalypse game. So inside here it tells you about the armies, the sides, the way that you pick warlords and choose who's the war master for each side. And it's got a schedule on how you can plan out your day to play an Apocalypse game, because they are huge. They'll take generally at least a day, sometimes a whole weekend, and people have extended them to a week. We've got organising the Apocalypse, and then we've got three missions, or what are they called? We'll go with missions, 3 missions to actually play for the Apocalypse games. Now obviously you can create your own, and they've said in here you can do whatever you want in terms of scenarios, but they've given you 3 to do. There's some interesting deployments in here as well, and they'll definitely change the game. So you could follow these, or you could create your own. Then we've got the next part, which is basically talking about beyond the Apocalypse, things you can do to enhance it and do even more. Then we're on to the Land Raiders. So this was featured on the community page a while ago on how to create your own Land Raider, make your own custom variant, and it gives you the rules on how to do that. So you select your primary spons and weapons, you choose your secondary spons and weapons, and then you add on any hull mounted stuff and any war gear and abilities that you've got. Depending on what you choose will depend on how limited the transport capacity is. So if you take twin las cannons, if you take las cannons everywhere, you have no transport capacity, and it shows you there with the Ultra. And we've got some other examples. So we've got the Wrath of Malnar or Yalnar, not sure, Angel Infernus as well, and they're just different variants with those customized options in place. Then we've got the Solemnus Aggressor and the Hades Diabolus. So they're just showing you variants that you can create using that custom sheet. We're on to narrative play now, which is quite it's got a chunk in here. We've got all Planet Strike scenarios and rules, and there's quite a bit because you end up getting warlord traits, you get extra detachments that you can take, and you have stratagems which can be used in this as well. And they're detailed in here, so we've got all of our scenarios inside here. And if you were wanting to play a narrative campaign, or I suppose some of these might even work for match play, just to give you a guideline on how to actually play, and some different missions that you can do. So there's a lot of content in here if you're wanting to play a mixed variety of games. And onto that, we've got Stronghold Assault, which gives you another 6 scenarios, or another 6 missions. It is missions, not scenarios. And extra abilities to use in those games. We've got Warlord traits and detachments again, and the stratagems to go with that. And then we've got in-depth breakdowns on all of the missions, which they have listed beforehand. So you can tweak these, but the other thing that I quite like with this part, and especially the narrative, is you can combine all of these to create the linear campaigns, which they've shown here. So they've got examples of some of the changes to the missions for Stronghold and Planet Strike. If you're doing a linear campaign, how you can change some of the bits to make it work a little bit better. We've got rules and PowerPoints for all of the bunkers, fortifications and whatnot. And there's quite a lot, so it's nice to have it all in one place again. And then we go on to the matched play rules. So just flying through this, we've got another 6 Eternal War missions, another 6 Maelstrom of War missions. We've got the mission rules, which have been updated. So we've seen boots on the ground for a while now. That's now in here where they said it was going to be. Targeting characters, not carriers, limits of command, and then the understrength support. So there's some extra rules inside there for match play as well. And I imagine they'll balance this from time to time, depending on how people exploit the game. They can just update this every year. we've got the breakdowns of all of these missions. And there's so much. I mean, we should really play a lot more for our battle reports. We end up playing the simple ones, so you don't have to remember all of the rules, but there's so many available, and it does mix up the game quite a bit that we should really just play more. We end up rolling the same stuff over and over again. We should probably like blank them and not do them if we roll it again. This was quite cool. We've got objective markers, just some examples. I don't know whether this just bulks out in the book a little bit, but some nice examples in here. I love the Necrons, the Drakari objective markers, and the Tau ones coming up are just fantastic. Look at these, with some nice little orc scrapyard stuff. Faction rules. This is something that a lot of people are looking at now. So if you play one of the armies that haven't got a codex yet, these give you a boost. You've got warlord traits, relics, and stratagems for a lot of different factions here. So, and they're quite big buffs. One thing I've noticed is pretty much all of these have got some way of getting you onto the table or moving a unit around the table. So with the Death Watch, they had the beacon in previous version of the game. They put it back in here as a relic, which is really cool. The Drakari have got the webway portal. They've got some nice little bits in there as well. The relic's nice. It lets you drain life, and you actually get life and reduce it off the enemy. Gene Stealers have got Return to the Shadows, which they already have their cool ambush ability, but they've also got some nice little relics and warlord traits to really, you know, make it quite themed to Gene Stealers. Harleys have Webway Assault. Imperial Knights is the big one in this, I think. I mean, you get an extra attack with the Warlord's weapon, which is already huge. I mean, this relic is +6 strength, -3 AP and 6 damage with re-rolling ones to hit, which is huge. And you add 1 to your invulnerable save, so that's quite huge. And Necrons have got their Veil of Darkness to transport across the table again. So there's a lot of... I was thinking there's not going to be much in here in terms of the extra relics, but there are some quite big army changing stuff, which is probably worth picking up. Underwhelmed with orcs, you get to mob up and extra daka. Not as big as the other ones, I don't think. Space Wolves have got an entry ability, command point. And then Tau, they've got a really good neuro chip. So whenever you basically can get command points back whenever the enemy uses a stratagem point and whenever you use them if you roll a 6, similar to the Ultramarines ability. Thousand Suns have got an extra spell which you can take, and they've also got a stratagem which lets you cast spells a little bit easier, and any doubles that you roll as well, that also means that you basically can't stop it. So there's some quite big buffs inside there for the armies that don't have codexes yet. I expect there's going to be more to come. One thing I'm not huge on is the terrain. I like that they're putting new rules in, but I think it overcomplicates some of it. Every single piece of scenery has got a different rule, and it's difficult to keep track of all of them, especially not having cards and things available. So, I mean, this one puts back in if you're 25% obscured, then you get cover. I mean, it's like they go in the backstepping a little bit. They made it simpler. Now they're just putting quite a few extra complicated rules rather than general rules in place. This is something I really like. Battlezone Empiric Storms. So you roll on the table and anything can happen. So you've got quite a lot of options here, which just changes the game dramatically. You've got a Psychic Boon, which reduces the cost of psychic powers by 1, so a minimum of 1, which is huge potentially. Null Tide, which removes all invulnerable saves. You can't use invulnerable saves. And that's just an example. I mean, I've not even read through all of these yet, but there's some quite huge changes to the game just by, you know, rolling this at the beginning, and mixing this with narrative play or even playing it in match play can definitely change the game quite a bit. And I think it would be quite fun to make it a bit more variable without having to remember too many rules, because you just kind of roll and that's what happens for that turn. So I really do like the inclusion of that, and I'm going to be playing some games using this. Probably to my detriment, people will be summoning full units and destroying me with it. We've got ladder campaigns and how to run those. And then we've got the updated points values. Now, I mean, I'm struggling with my own. I know that most of these Space Marine units and war gear have been reduced in price. I'm not too sure on the rest of them, so you'd have to check your own units line by line and see which ones have gone up and which ones have gone down. But it gives you the update. So, I mean, it's not been 6 months, has it? Maybe it's been just over 6 months, but there's a load of updates to points already. And I think it keeps it fresh, but depending on how you track your army lists and how you write them down, it might be difficult for you. You might need to go back into your codex or your index and change the points now. So they're all in here anyway. So that's pretty much the entire book. I wanted to do a quick, just showing you what was inside there. It's try to keep it to 10 minutes, so it's quick rather than droning it out. So hopefully this has helped you make the decision whether you want to pick it up or not. Either way, hopefully it's been helpful. Thank you very much for watching this as well. And there's a lot more videos to come. We've got a ginger hair tutorial out tomorrow, so if you want to learn how to paint gingers, that will be a tutorial to watch. And then I'm sure we will have some more chats and some more stuff on in the future. So thank you very much for watching this, and I'll see you on the next video.